All right, good afternoon. Sorry for the usual delay. It's Friday. After the briefing at 1:15 p.m., there will be a briefing here by Izumi Nakamitsu, Undersecretary General and High Representative for Disarmament Affairs. She will be here to brief you on the 11th Review Conference of the Parties to the Treaty on Non-Proliferation of Nuclear Weapons, otherwise known as the NPT. At 2 p.m. on Monday, Ambassador Do Hong Viet, President of the 11th NPT Review Conference, will be here to speak to you more about that topic, and there'll be more events around the NPT during the week. Let me start off with Lebanon and some tragic news from our peacekeeping mission. We are deeply saddened to learn of the death of yet another blue helmet. He died earlier today. The Secretary General expresses his deepest condolences to the families, friends, and colleagues of 31-year-old Corporal Rico Pramudia of Indonesia, as well to the government and people of his country. Corporal Pramudia succumbed to his wounds sustained in an incident that took place on March 29th. This is, okay. On March 29th, when a projectile hit his position in Adchit Al Qusayr in southern Lebanon. At that time, his position came under fire amidst hostilities between Israel and Hizbullah. In the same incident, you'll recall, tragically claimed the life of another Indonesian peacekeeper, Cadet Farizal Rambe. As previously shared, preliminary findings of the investigation indicate that a shell fired from an Israeli Merkava tank struck a UNIFIL position, leading to the death of the peacekeepers. In order to mitigate the risks of UN personnel, UNIFIL has repeatedly provided the Israeli Defense Forces with the coordinates of all UN positions and facilities. The Secretary General once again calls on all to uphold their obligations under international humanitarian law and ensure the safety and security of UN personnel, as well as the inviolability of UN property and assets at all times. As a tragic reminder of the dangers of these hostilities, with Corporal Pramudia's passing, 6 peacekeepers serving with UNIFIL have now been killed and several others seriously injured amidst the recent hostilities between Hezbollah and Israel. These incidents are unacceptable and they must stop. We've requested that the relevant parties ensure these cases are investigated and, where appropriate, prosecuted by national authorities in order to bring the perpetrators to justice and ensure accountability. Attacks against UN peacekeepers may constitute war crimes under international law. On the political front, the Secretary General welcomes the announcement yesterday of a 3-week extension of the cessation of hostilities arrangements agreed to by the Lebanese government and Israel. Mr. Guterres urges all to fully respect the cessation of hostilities and to cease further attacks. Despite this agreement, our peacekeeping colleagues in the South did report concerning incident earlier this afternoon as a UNIFIL patrol was clearing a roadblock near the village of Tiri in Sector West. An Israeli drone dropped a stun grenade a few meters from the peacekeepers. Roadblock clearance is essential to ensure the freedom of movement of all UNIFIL patrols. Thankfully, no peacekeepers were injured, and the patrol was able to continue on its work. Moving to the humanitarian front in Lebanon, our colleagues at the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs say that while the ceasefire has slowed down displacement, people are still on the move as families trying to return to their communities face damaged homes, disrupted services, and continued security risks. There are nearly 116,000 people that are still registered in collective shelters countrywide. That's down about 4% just from yesterday. These are registered numbers. Our humanitarian colleagues say that hundreds of thousands of people remain displaced outside of these shelters, and they're staying with relatives and host communities and other makeshift arrangements. In Beirut, displacement has increased as instability persists in parts of southern Lebanon. Some families are going back briefly to check on their homes, but returns remain limited in the south, Nabatea, in Beirut's southern suburbs, and parts of the Bekaa Valley. Emergency assessments have resumed both inside and outside collective shelters after a short pause at the start of the ceasefire, helping us to refine support efforts to both displaced families and those who are trying to stay in their homes. Since March 2nd, our partners have distributed nearly 150,000 blankets, some 117,000 mattresses, as well as more than 91,000 hygiene kits and 46,000 menstrual hygiene kits. More than 6.6 million hot and cold meals have been provided by us and our partners in collective shelters, along with some 94,000 ready-to-eat rations. Separately, our human rights colleagues published an interesting report today documenting the significant civilian toll of the first weeks of the recent escalation in Lebanon, including deaths, large-scale displacement, and serious damage to homes, health facilities, and other civilian infrastructure. The report raises concerns about possible violations of international humanitarian law by all parties and calls for accountability and the protection of civilians. It also calls for prompt, thorough, and independent, impartial investigations into all incidents with full accountability for those responsible. Turning to the occupied Palestinian territory, and our colleagues at the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs yesterday released a new mapping of access restrictions that Israeli forces have set up across the West Bank, including East Jerusalem. It shows that restriction of movements and access of Palestinians across the West Bank is tightening. On at least 3 occasions last month, Israeli forces installed obstacles, which include checkpoints, gates, and trenches and earth mounds across Nablus, Salfit, and Tubas governorates in the West Bank. These obstacles disrupt people's access to services, to homes, and livelihoods, and come up on top of other restrictions that have been imposed for decades. The analysis is carried out by a survey done by OCHA and their partners in December of last year, when they documented 925 obstacles that restrict access to livelihoods and services for some 3.4 million Palestinians. That's 43% above the average over the past 2 decades and the highest number on records. Turning to Gaza, a recent survey covered over 40 UN agencies and humanitarian NGOs shows a system-wide shortage of engine oil and spare parts, which, as you can imagine, are essential to keep vehicles running and generators running in the Gaza Strip. If the shortage persists, essential services such as health, water, sanitation will be at risk of erosion and even potential collapse. Humanitarian partners warn that approvals and sustained flow of supplies are critically needed. Meanwhile, health partners say that last Friday, just about 43% of all health points that were operational before October 2023 were still functioning, most of them only partially. Health partners have provided an average of 276,000 consultations every week in April, up from about 201,000 in March. Recently, WHO completed a 128-bed extension at Al-Shifa Hospital to help with inpatient capacity. And at least one note to correct something we said yesterday: humanitarian partners supporting daily production of 290, not 230 metric tons of bread. Back here this morning, the Secretary General spoke at an informal dialogue on the UN80 and Pact for the Future initiative, and he said that those initiatives are about restoring trust through concrete action, meaningful reform, and results that people can see, feel, and believe in. He said that the Pact of the Future is the world's pledge to tackle such shared challenges together, while the UN80 initiative is about equipping ourselves with the right tools to do the job. Together, they are designed to renew the vision and machinery of multilateralism so the UN can further deliver with credibility and impact today and for generations to come. His remarks were shared with you online. Our Deputy Secretary General, Amina Mohammed, will leave this evening for Melbourne, Australia, to participate on behalf of the Secretary General in the Women Deliver 2026, a global forum that brings together civil society, advocates, and partners to advance gender equality and the rights of women and girls. During the visit, Ms. Mohammed will engage with a wide range of stakeholders, including civil society, youth leaders, women business leaders, philanthropic partners, and senior government officials from Australia and the Pacific. The Deputy Secretary General's program is centered on hearing directly from those driving change on the ground, strengthening multilateral cooperation, and advancing collective action in support of gender equality and empowerment of women and girls. The visit will also offer an opportunity for dialogue, public engagement, and partnership building, reinforcing our priorities and highlighting the essential role of civil society voices in accelerating progress on the Sustainable Development Goals. Amina Mohammed will be back in New York on Tuesday. Want to flag an important and depressing report on food insecurity and malnutrition. The Global Report on Food Crises 2026, released today, shows that acute food insecurity and malnutrition levels remain alarmingly high and deeply entrenched. Looking ahead, the report warns that severe levels of acute food insecurity remain critical in multiple contexts this year. Ongoing conflicts, climate change, global economic uncertainty, including risks to food markets, are likely to sustain or worsen conditions in many countries. In particular, while a full assessment is premature, the report notes that the escalation of the conflict in the Middle East, in addition to causing further displacement in a region already hosting millions of forcibly displaced and returnees, exposes countries and territories with food crises to both direct and indirect risks of global agri-food markets disruptions. This is the 10th edition of this report, and it notes that acute hunger has doubled over the past decade, with two famines declared last year for the first time in the report's history. 10 countries, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Democratic Republic of the Congo, Myanmar, Nigeria, Pakistan, South Sudan, Sudan, Syria, and Yemen, accounted for 2/3 of all people facing high levels of acute hunger. In total, 266 million human beings in 47 countries or territories experienced high levels of acute food insecurity last year. Quick update from the Democratic Republic of the Congo, where the head of our peacekeeping mission there, James Swan, is continuing his mission to the east. He's in Goma today. Upon arrival, he spoke to the media and said his interactions in North Kivu would be focused on supporting the ceasefire monitoring, the protection of civilians, and the mission's support to the ongoing peace efforts in the country. He will meet with our UN colleagues, engage with the AFC M23 representatives, as well as members of the expanded Joint Verification Mechanism Plus. As you'll recall, the peacekeeping mission is mandated to support the ceasefire through this verification mechanism. Through his visit, Mr. Swan said he hoped to build momentum towards de-escalation and to support the implementation of the ceasefire. And in ABYEI, our peacekeepers there are reporting some encouraging news, where a key lifeline has just been restored. The peacekeeping mission says its military engineers from the Vietnamese contingent have completed the rehabilitation of a critical 37-kilometer road linking ABYEI to Agok, reconnecting communities across that region. The road, rehabilitated in partnership with local administration, will improve access to markets, healthcare, and other essential services. It is rehabilitating. The project directly facilitates the implementation of the peacekeeping mission's mandate on the protection of civilians. Following the opening of the road, peacekeepers delivered hospital beds and other essential supplies to the ABYEI Health Department. With the rainy season approaching, many routes risk becoming impassable. The peacekeepers tell us, and they are racing to rehabilitate some 200 kilometers of road to prevent further isolation of various communities. And our colleagues at the International Organization for Migration today said that nearly 62,000 people have been displaced by drought across 5 districts in Somalia, and that's just since the beginning of this year. Data shows that drought now accounts for 3 out of 4 new displacements. That's a 22% increase from last year. That underscores growing severity of climate shocks. IOM says the scale and pace of drought-driven displacement and food insecurity are rapidly outstripping resources. With drought expected to persist, the agency is calling for urgent and sustained support to address these growing needs. Speaking of money, the Peacebuilding Fund today approved $3 million for an initiative in Liberia that will focus on improving access to justice for women and girls, particularly in the context of transitional justice. It'll be implemented by UN Women, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights, and a number of and an international NGO. It will strengthen the capacity of women's rights organizations to engage in national peace building and justice processes, while enhancing cooperation among civil society, government, and local communities. The project builds on Liberia's efforts to address the legacy of conflict to promote inclusive and accountable institutions. And you'll recall that yesterday we announced a $30 million pledge from Qatar to the Gang Suppression Force Trust Fund. in Haiti. Yesterday, the government of the Dominican Republic pledged $10 million to the trust fund for 2027, and the government of Greece pledged 150,000 euros. As of today, 15 member states have pledged support to the trust fund, bringing the total number of pledges to $213.5 million, with actual cash at about $174.1 million. Again, we thank all donors for their support for the operationalization of the gang suppression force in Haiti, and we continue, member states, to give and give generously. Today, the Secretary General appointed Maher Nasser, Director of the Outreach Division in the Global Communications Department, as a Commissioner General of the UN Expo Pavilion at Expo 2027 in Belgrade. As he also appointed was Mathilde Mort, the UN Resident Coordinator in Serbia, as Deputy Commissioner General. Mr. Nasser and Ms. Mort will lead UN presence at next year's specialized expo hosted in Belgrade under the theme Play for Humanity, Sport and Music for All, with all support of relevant UN entities and the country team in Serbia. Expo 2027 is the first specialized expo to be held in the Balkans. In addition, the UN Pavilion, we will contribute to development of programming and activities that highlight the importance of multilateralism in countries working together to achieve the SDGs. In case you're bored, this weekend, there are a lot of international days to celebrate. So, today is why we're here. It is the International Day of Multilateralism and Diplomacy for Peace. Yep, it is. Multilateralism is at the heart of the UN, and the Secretary General said, Charter remains our moral compass for peace, human dignity, prosperity, and human rights. Saturday, call up your favorite delegate because it is International Delegates Day. Take a delegate to dinner. Recognizing that diplomats who bring the UN to life through negotiation... They should take you, yeah, exactly. Recognizing that diplomats who bring the UN to life through negotiations and cooperation. Also, tomorrow is World Malaria Day. This theme is driven to end malaria. Now we can, now we must. Sunday is the International Day of Chernobyl Disaster Remembrance, a reminder of the devastating human cost of nuclear disasters and the need for continued vigilance. Sunday is also World Intellectual Property Day, which highlights the role of IP in driving creativity for sports. And we start today an international week, which is the World Immunization Week, which is very serious, highlighting the need for collective action and the importance of vaccines to protect people of all ages, and to remember all the brave health workers who put their lives on the line to inoculate children in wartime. And if you have the luxury of being in a developed country and take a vaccine, do it. There you go. Enough advocacy. Go ahead, Edie.
Thank you, Steph. Two follow-ups. On the UNIFIL peacekeeper who succumbed to his wounds, did he pass away in Lebanon, or was he back in Indonesia?
No, he was in Beirut. He had been evacuated to a hospital in Beirut.
Okay, and on Gaza, the shortage of engine oil, is that because of a ban by Israel on importing it?
It's part of the restrictions, and we're not able to bring in as much oil as we can. We are bringing in some fuel. Our colleagues at UNOPS are responsible for it. They're doing a good job, but we need more to be brought in. Okay, I'll go, Abdelhamid, no? I'll go online.
Thank you. Recently, there was a meeting in Cairo among some members of the Board of Peace and Nikolai Mladinov. Mladinov, he emphasized the disarming of Palestinian groups in order to get to phase 2. Is that correct? Wouldn't it be first that Israel and the others to respect the details of phase 1, including, the volume of the humanitarian aid, the opening of the crossing points, and ending the killing? Because every day there is a killing, including today, 1 Palestinian killed and 3 were wounded in Gaza. So can we jump to phase 2 before we respect phase 1? Thank you.
Look, we are not a party to these political negotiations. The role of the UN in terms of the Trump plan, which was endorsed by the Security Council, focuses on the humanitarian work, which we are doing, which we're always pushing to do more of. Right, there continues to be restrictions that we need to that need to be lifted, but we want the parties to come to an agreement for the sake of the Palestinians in Gaza and for the sake of Israelis as well, to settle the conflict through negotiations and resume a path to a political solution.
My second question, can you share with us any information about the closed meeting yesterday on Western Sahara? Who briefed the council? Any information you can?
Stéphane de Mistura was there. He briefed the council, and Alexander Ivanko, the head of the peacekeeping mission of MINURSO, was there as well. We'll go online. Zara?
Thank you, Steph. In light of the statement by Iran's permanent mission to the UN regarding the U.S. seizure of vessel Tosca was carrying critical medical equipment and dialysis supply, can the seizure of this vessel and the prevention of the delivery of its cargo be considered as a holding life of Iranian citizen and patient hostage and a violation of international humanitarian law and international maritime law? What is the Secretary General reaction to this matter? My second question, what actions will the United Nations to support patients in Iran given the seizure of the vessel Tosca and the obstruction of the delivery of these medical supplies?
Well, on the first point, the Secretary General's position is very clear that the Strait of Hormuz needs to reopen. Freedom of navigation in these international waters needs to return, and to return quickly. One, for the respect of international law, and of course for the resumption of global trade. I mean, we're seeing the impact of the closure that it has on the people in the region and further afield, as we talk about here almost every day. On the specific cargo, we have no particular information on what was in the ship, but what we have seen and we're concerned about is continued seizures of vessels by both the Islamic Republic of Iran and the U.S. in the Strait, and that's why we want to see them reopened. On your second question, our colleagues at the UN country team in Iran on the humanitarian front are working with the authorities in order to try to mitigate the humanitarian impact of the conflict. Okay. Yes.
Esther,
Yep.
sorry. This vessel, Tosca, was carrying critical medical equipment and dialysis supplies.
No, as I said, Zara, as I said, I don't have any information on that. Obviously, the continued closure of the Strait is having a humanitarian impact on the Islamic Republic of Iran, on other countries in the Gulf that rely on imports, food stuff and others that are not going through. And that's why we want to see the Strait reopened.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
This may be something to ask Ms. Nakamitsu about, but on NPT EarthCon, will Secretary General give the opening speech as is customary at the NPT EarthCon?
Yes,
on
the
Monday,
Secretary General will
person?
speak at the NPT. As you know, the issue of nuclear proliferation is one that is high on his agenda. Okay. On that note, happy Friday.